8 weeks ago, the message from Washington was absolute. There will be no deal with Iran, only unconditional surrender. Today, the U.S. is the one chasing a negotiation. The initial plan relied on a single assumption, that overwhelming conventional military superiority would force a fast, clean victory. But wars rarely follow a script. Iran refused to meet the U.S. on a traditional battlefield. Washington had prepared to dominate a military conflict, only to find itself engaged in an entirely different type of struggle. This map shows the Persian Gulf, and the specific narrow passage known as the Strait of Hormuz. It is one of the most significant maritime bottlenecks in the world. By obstructing this narrow artery, Iran effectively restricted the global energy supply. The consequences reached far beyond the Gulf. Markets reacted instantly, and gas prices spiked for consumers across the globe. By targeting global economics, Iran secured immediate geopolitical leverage, forcing the world's most powerful military to account for factors beyond the reach of its weapons. The U.S. responded with its primary strength, naval power. The goal was a total physical blockade to cut off Iran's oil revenue. But the blockade was met with evasion. Ghost tankers disabled tracking systems, and on radar screens across the fleet, target ships simply disappeared. Despite the world's strongest navy, oil kept moving. Revenue flowed back to Tehran through an invisible trade network. A billion-dollar destroyer is optimized for high-seas combat, but it provides little defense against an economic system that has learned to hide in plain sight. As the campaign stalled, the focus shifted to the domestic fallout in Washington. The lack of a clear victory after billions in spending created intense political friction and led to the removal of top military leadership. This is where the narrative war begins. When the physical battlefield offers no progress, governments attempt to manage perception by claiming the opponent's leadership is fractured or on the verge of collapse. Meanwhile, the U.S. is facing pressure from regional allies. Leaders in Israel are watching closely, with some pushing for a massive escalation that could pull the U.S. into a wider conflict. The inability to resolve the conflict quickly has cost the U.S. its control over the situation, leaving it vulnerable to internal political instability and the shifting agendas of its allies. The options remaining for Washington are increasingly difficult. A direct strike risks a massive regional war, while targeting infrastructure threatens global economic collapse. This leaves negotiation. It is the most viable path to de-escalation, but means accepting a deal from a weakened position. Every day the situation remains unresolved, the internal burden on the U.S. government grows. Domestic inflation is rising, high oil prices are impacting the economy, and the pressure of upcoming elections is forcing leadership to look for an exit. These combined constraints have forced the superpower into a reactive position, where its moves are dictated more by domestic necessity than military strategy. The most likely path forward involves a significant military strike, an action substantial enough to provide the political cover needed for the pivot that follows. Once that requirement is met, a reluctant negotiation will likely begin, as the economic and political costs of continuing have become unsustainable. In this landscape, the control of structural leverage has become the primary factor in determining the outcome of modern global competition.